Okay. Oops, sorry. What's up, friends? Welcome back to the Squanch, Wisecrack's Rick and Morty podcast. I'm Michael Burns, joined as always by the Squanchers. We got Ryan Haley. Ryan, how are you today?
Well, beloved, great. Mike, thanks for asking.
Hey, anytime. And very special guest, I think first time on the Squanch. You know him and love him already. Show me the meanings. Austin Hayden. Austin, how are you?
I'm confused. I'm not used to being on a Wisecrack podcast where I don't do the intro. And what is this wubble lubble? I'm used to. Show me the meaning. I'm so confused right now. I don't know what's happening, but I'm ready to talk.
It's different here. Yeah.
You'll get used to Squanch
like
culture.
I'm glitching, but I'm ready.
Yeah. As you said, you were glitching. You actually did on my Skype feed. So that worked.
Yeah, me too. That was cool.
Yeah, we'll do that more. Actually, don't. But we're here today to talk about Season 5, Episode 3, A Rickconvenient Mort. But first, real quick, just because it's your first time on Squanch, Austin, for anyone who doesn't know you, for anyone who doesn't regularly listen to Show Me the Meaning, I'm sure many of them do, how would you describe yourself in 3 sentences or less?
I am a confused former Christian who was studying theology, found philosophy, and is now navigating the tumultuous seas of art and philosophical reasoning and perpetually stuck in an existential crisis.
In Australia.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really great. And we could describe you, I think, along with that, that was beautiful. And for those of us who are simple-minded, we could say what? You write, you teach, you make videos, you do podcasts, you make movies, you exercise. I think you surf.
Exercise.
You do everything.
That's me.
Yeah.
Austin's the guy who Morty fan.
Yeah. And let me ask you this before we start. What's your relationship with Rick and Morty, the show? Like, have you been a longtime fan of like, what's your general attitude about this show before we engage on this deep creative journey together?
Dude, no BS. Okay, so I was a huge fan the first couple seasons. Obviously, Wisecrack's bread and butter was like, what can we squeeze out of Rick and Morty, right? So we were constantly
that's
doing
crazy when it was like that. Not anymore, but that was crazy.
And it was like every video we did was guaranteed to get 1 million views, and I was all in. I was like, fuck yeah, let's see all the cool angles we can get out of Rick and Morty. And then I went through some Rick and Morty fatigue, and I would say I've been in that fatigue for the last little bit. Maybe it was just last season. I don't know what the deal is. And I was actually apprehensive when our producer was like, hey, do you want to be on the Squanch? And I was like, yeah. But it was mainly because I was like, I want to talk with you guys. But I was a little bit like, fuck, does that mean I have to because I wasn't planning on watching the 5th season. And then when he asked, I was like, okay, so I'll watch it. And I was watching it and I was like, dude, why are you such a fucking grump? This show is fucking brilliant, man. Like, I was laughing out loud. It's so good, man. And I was like, it was just the fatigue. It was just like the cultural, you know when like everybody loves something, and when you stick your nose in something that everyone is praising about, you kind of want to get a little bit like rebellious. I think I was being rebellious in my own stubbornness. I'm a Taurus after all, so maybe I was just digging my heels in. But it's fucking great. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the
so,
Ford late model, light blue paint job, constantly has the donut on, only 3 rear wheels. Well, it's great. I mean, real quick, too, shout out to our bud in the chat, Dave Hoyt, for the awesome donation. And he said, surprise, Austin, the perfect background noise for a brain-dead EverQuest raid night. So, Dave, we're glad Austin could be a surprise. So now that we know who Austin is, we know his attitude towards Rick and Morty. We know he's back in now. Let's talk this episode. Ryan, I want to start with you. What were your thoughts? Season 5, Episode 3. Initial thoughts, go.
My initial thoughts, watch the episode. I've only seen it once, and I would say I thought it was a slight step back from the masterpiece we got last week. I'm sorry, everybody involved. It was still, I would say, solid B-, maybe C+ on the edge there episode. We're kind of right in the middle for me. It was it was kind of a more dramatic episode than normal.
Yeah.
We had Morty going through, last week they killed God or however you want to interpret that, and this week they killed love. Morty went through a big breakup and kind of found out. Well, I assume we'll get into what Planetina is all about. But anyway, and then obviously all the orgy stuff, which I thought was weird because this is kind of like up my alley, like in terms of not to say that I've been involved with.
Oh yeah.
No, you can't take it back. Can't take it back.
Yeah. We need details.
it's I anytime they go on into the just insanity route of just like weird stuff that could possibly be happening in the universe, and they go and see it. I always like when they do that and stuff. And I don't know, it was funny sometimes, but then also it was like weird. It was like, this grandpa and his granddaughter on an orgy bender across multiple planets, and then Morty's like 14 and like with, it was a very sex charged episode, which
very
it was okay.
Sexual episode.
What'd y'all think?
Austin, how about you? And just to be clear, Austin, we've fallen into the pattern of grading episodes of this part of the show. We never talked about it. It's just happened every episode, so let's keep going with it. So what'd you think, and then what grade would you give it?
Fucking solid A. This episode spoke to my heart. I was telling Michael this in the chat. I'm currently in my own sort of like early stages of being sprung. So like I kind of
Planetina.
Exactly. So I'm fucking vibing with Morty's teenage fucking cheesy romance. Like, give me that shit. I'm a sap. Okay. So I'm vibing 100% with that. I love this. Okay. So I listened to the podcast from last week and there were some heavy religious themes. And I think that a lot of the episodes carry heavy religious or kind of like critiques of religious themes. And I thought this one had a really interesting kind of at the end of the world, to quote the Bible, at the end of the world, they're eat and drink for tomorrow we die kind of thing, which is like you get this nihilism. These planets are being destroyed, which Rick sort of loves because he can take advantage of his hedonism, and so he can go through and he can be like, fuck, at the end of a world, and he's got these 3 worlds that are about to be destroyed, and let's just go in there and get chaotic. And so you get like the debauchery in that world, and then you get the pure romance on Earth. And the difference is those planets are being destroyed and they're at the end of their lives, whereas Earth is being threatened with destruction, but it can be saved. Can it be saved by activism? Well, you have that with Planetina, and then all the problems that come with the commercialization and commodification of her project. But then you also have Morty's idealistic love that is the thing that is warring against the destruction on a planet that is being threatened with its end, right? And so there's this wonderful contradiction between like nihilism and romanticism, and I just found myself really kind of drawn into some of these themes. And I was a huge fucking Captain Planet fan when I was a kid, so I was like, I love the kind of reworking of that, especially using like a feminine voice that kind of like really fits in with a lot of like the divine feminine and Gaia theory, and I really dug it. Oh, and I'm watching The Walking Dead for the first time ever, so sorry, but I'm in the middle of the 2nd season, and I was literally thinking, why is everybody not banging each other at this point? Because this is like the end of the world. And then they started banging each other, and I was like, okay, yeah. So that also my thoughts. Solid A. Loved it.
A. We had a B-, maybe high C from Ryan. I liked this episode. I think, like Ryan had said, last week was so good, it felt like a little bit of a come down from that. Another one that I think I liked more the second time around, there's a thing that happens sometimes at meetings at Wisecrack where I will say like, hey, maybe I can do a thing on weather. Hey, do you guys want to talk about the weather? And I always pitch ideas on the weather. And they're like, shut up. We're not going to make a video about the weather or the climate. So this is a fun excuse to talk about those sort of things. I thought they did a really good job of playing off the tropes of like 90s be a good environmentalist culture. Because, I watched Captain Planet. I remember, I think it was like Nickelodeon did a thing called like The Big Help or something. And there was a song about how if you care about the planet, you should take a shorter shower. And it stuck in my head for years. And I was a kid, I would count because I was like, if this shower goes too long, the ocean is done. So, I've internalized some of those things in my life, but I thought it dealt with those well. I thought for me, one of the strongest parts of the episode was seeing Beth be a mom. And I thought I actually kind of liked those moments, like the Beth and Morty dynamic throughout the episode. I also liked that this episode mixed it up a bit. It gave us some new teams and some new pairs. I know we'll break that down a bit. But no, it's something we've talked about before and something I think we wanted to see. So I will give it just a solid B. If we're in the 100-point grading scale, it's going to get an 85, right in the middle. But before we get into it, let's do the quick episode recap. And then we'll break down all the fun stuff that happened in a Rickconvenient. Mort, here's our recap. After picking up custom T-shirts that say, and sorry guys, I'm going to say this, it was in the show, Rick and Morty pussy pounders. Rick and Morty are caught in an acid rainstorm created by the Diesel Weasel. Luckily, a conservationist super person named Planetina comes to save the day before flying off with Morty for a first date over vegan donuts. Meanwhile, Rick and Summer, who is now a member of the Pussy Pounders, fly off to visit 3 planets on the eve of destruction so they can party and eat ass with their about to be extinct inhabitants. Now, Morty, back on Earth, is now extremely sprung on Planetina, a sentient amalgam of natural elements, and he goes off on his own to rescue a bunny from a forest fire to meet back up with her, and ends up meeting her kids, the Tina-Tears, the 4 adults whose rings combine to create her. While at first he's weirded out by her adult handlers, Morty and Planetina end up going steady, much to Beth's dismay, as she doesn't think an adult woman should move in with her 14-year-old son. Back out in space, Rick and Summer are on their extremely inappropriate grandfather-granddaughter fuck trip, which is going great until Rick gets a little too attached to a woman with boobs on her elbows named Daphne. On their final cosmic orgy stop, Summer blows up the asteroid about to obliterate the planet so she can prove Daphne's been using Rick for a ride away from annihilation, which surprisingly ends up impressing Rick. Things take a turn for Morty and Planetina when they're zapped into a fan convention. The Tina-Tears don't support the relationship, and Morty is tied up in a broom closet, but goes full psycho, bites off a guy's finger, uses his ring to burn multiple people to death, sneaks into the Tina-Tears meeting where they're arranging to sell Planetina to a Saudi prince, and he murders everyone there, steals their rings along the way. And with all 4 elemental rings, Morty can now free Planetina from the Tina-Tears' control, which is cool for a minute, but then Planetina goes full eco-terrorist, kills 300 people, and Morty realizes he can't love her anymore. And in a genuinely warm moment, the episode ends with Beth comforting a crying Morty, shattered after his first real love. The end. Mm-hmm. So let's get into it. I don't know, Austin, you're the guest. Is there anything, a theme or an idea you want to get into right off the bat? Something that stood out from this episode?
First of all, I love how there was a nod to acid rain, because do you remember when we were kids, that was like the thing that was going to I did a science experiment in elementary school where I took rain and then I used like filtered water or good water, and I had a couple plants, and I measured the effects by like watering the plants over, like a month or whatever to see. And the plant that I used acid rain on wilted and died, whereas the other plant that I used like fresh water on, like filtered water, like thrived. And I don't think that today we talk enough about acid rain. So I thought that was really fun. That's just a really small, superficial thing, because that hooked me from the beginning, because I was like, oh, yeah, acid rain, that's not a thing anymore. So that's really superficial and silly, but I really like that start, because I don't think the younger generation understand it.
Yeah, Ryan, how about you? What's one of the themes or plot points that you came away thinking about after this episode?
Well, definitely like how far, the hypocritical nature of Planetina, obviously, that big turn, and kind of that is I think something you can apply to a lot of situations. Like, how far are you willing to, what are you going to sacrifice for, for safety of future humanity, but are you going to, I'm sorry, I'm fucking rambling right now. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, it makes sense. It makes sense.
But was she a hypocrite, or did she just kind of just get pushed to her limits? Whereas, like, she got caught up in the love thing. She wanted to do the love thing, but then at the same time, her like mission was to save the planet, and it wasn't like she had these principles like she didn't have a code or something like that from the outset. Like, I will not harm humans in the preservation of the planet. It was And then when she found the real bad guys, so to speak, she went all fucking like full board. Is that hypocritical?
Let's zoom out and put it this way, and we can talk about it, because I want to hear what Ryan has to think about this. But I do think it's like the context is interesting, right? You have Planetina initially is like this 90s era environmentalist, right? And in the 90s, it was all about like recycle, take short showers, walk when you can drive, take the bus, all individual actions focused on how if we as individuals did stuff, everything would be okay with the planet. I think what we've seen in recent years, when like the ocean's on fire, that's fun that it happened this week when this episode aired, by the way. But when like power grids are shutting down and the ocean starts on fire, there's this realization that's like, oh, even if me and my friends do all the right things environmentally, There's major, oil companies and other things controlling stuff that we can't have a say in. And I kind of felt like Planetina's journey was a bit of that, starting with a sort of like, if we all do our part, we can save the planet, to then having the realization that like everything she did before wasn't working. So now she like breaks bad and is like, fuck it, let's burn the whole shit down. But I think the interesting question is like, and I don't know the right answer to this, was it bad, hypocritical, evil? Was there some reason to it? And I think it's interesting to look at what she does when she goes on her like bad spree. Like first she slashes some tires on some cars, and Morty's like, oh, okay, takes out some elephant poachers. We don't like that. But then she throws a Molotov cocktail through a congressman's mansion. We don't know the congressman. Maybe they deserved it. But the darkest part of it is when she shows up at, I think, a coal mine, tells the miners to get away. You can do whatever you want. We need our jobs. And then she, I think, according to Morty, kills like 300 people at the coal mine.
Right. Where my mind went was Thanos and the whole Avengers predicament, because it's very similar. It's like, what do you think about his message? He wants to kill half of humanity to save the other half of humanity. And how moral is that? And obviously to, any non-sociopathic person, it seems like that is evil, even though you're doing it in the name of good. And so, that's kind of, to me, the grand theme of the episode is doing, the road to hell is paved with good intentions kind of thing, like, and where to draw the line. And it's blurry to me that at the end of the day, that there's not a solution. It's just kind of like, it's a judgment call, what do y'all think?
Yeah, I wondered. That's why I asked if it's hypocritical. Not that I'm saying that it was like morally justified or something like that, but is there some sort of like fundamental hypocritical or contradictory thing that we can identify in her worldview? And I don't know if it's hypocritical, even though I still think that we could say that, it's maybe not the best judgment call, because think about it. Like, are these miners really the ones that deserve to be punished? I mean, They were workers. Are they the lobbyists? Are they big business that need to be shut down? Right. So was her expression of violence directed at the right people? And is it ever justified to use violence urging on eco-terrorism? Right? And I was thinking I was thinking about the movie I was thinking about the movie First Reformed. And remember the husband in First Reformed, how he joins that like eco-terrorist group, and he doesn't want to have kids, and they become like anti-natalists and shit like that. And that was like, that movie has stuck with me so potently. So I was kind of thinking about that. Like, is it ever right to join that type of group? And then you've got, like all these groups around the world at the moment that are doing quote unquote extreme activities that are like stopping train lines and stuff like that, like coming up right to the point. They're not killing people yet. But if people do want to read something about this, Ministry for the Future is a great book by KSR, Kim Stanley Robinson, where that actually addresses this. And there's this group of people that they're stopping the continuous production of fossil fuels. And the great fundamental question is it terrorism because they're striking the fear in people's hearts, or is this somehow politically expedient? Right. And is it therefore justified?
There's a book I've been reading that I thought connected with the episode. I might say his name wrong. It's a Norwegian eco-Marxist guy named Anders Malm. And the book is called How to Blow Up a Pipeline. To be clear, it's not an actual instruction manual. This isn't some anarchist cookbook thing. But in the book, his basic argument is that like all these people have been doing peaceful stuff about the environment for like years. The book opens with him being like, I'm at this rally. We're doing all this great stuff. And then he's like, and that was in 1995 and nothing got better. So in that book, he gets to this middle space where he's like, if people really want to make an effect, they might have to break some shit. But he doesn't talk about violence towards humans. Just kind of says like, maybe you do blow up a pipeline or shut down a plant or do something disruptive. Of course, that's where I think if we would have seen Planetina like go to some factory or even like the coal mine when no one was there and destroy it, or do something like to shut down some carbon emitting factory, fine. I think that would be in the realm of like, okay, that's gnarly. But in history, people do gnarly shit sometimes for good reasons. But when it comes to like torching working class miners who, as they say in the episode, like just need a job, because they have to have a home and eat food. That's where, to me, it becomes like, Planetina terrorism.
Yeah, and is this a sort of like center left, center liberal response where she punishes the people rather than the structure, right? So she punishes the miners who, if we were going to take a more sort of like, let's say, structural, societal, political critique, we would look at it and be like, well, they're workers, right? Like they're the ones who themselves are exploited and alienated, and so they don't really have any other option. They have to work in this situation. And so how much does personal responsibility come into this? How much are they to blame for the kind of production of, burning fossil fuels, et cetera, and is her ire directed at the right people, or was there like a better approach to kind of?
Well, I have a question for you guys then. Do we think they could have done a better job with that character? Because I think like one of the things, we're seeing here is like with the Planetina character, really cool critique of Captain Planet era cartoon environmentalism. Awesome fun. If you're of a certain age, it taps into something. If you're not of a certain age, sorry. But at the end, it kind of like then goes all the way to the other side. She's murdering people. And then it's easy for us to be like, oh, she's an eco-terrorist. Who cares? Like to kind of like write that off. I wonder if the character could have been developed in a more like nuanced way that didn't make it so easy to be like, oh, she's just a terrorist, or am I expecting too much? But what do you think about that character in general, how she's constructed in the show?
What do you think, Ryan?
I will say that one thought I had during the show, during this whole episode, was that it felt kind of unfocused. That was kind of the reason for my middle grade there at the beginning, was that I kept going like trying to figure out what I was being told. What is the meaning? As our other show talks about. But it becomes more and more obvious as it goes along. But yeah, I agree that her character, is very relatable to the certain sect of people in the 90s. So I guess obviously Rick and Morty is that's the demographic and stuff. But I don't know. It didn't necessarily work for me as a from beat to beat. Yeah. And then I did like the whole just jadedness of the kids from the 90s, like how they had all started out as these hopeful heroes and stuff, and they all had their role to play, and then every single one of them has just cashed in and doesn't care about the environment clearly and is just trying to get the money. So I don't know.
I loved how they're selling Funko toys. They're body shaming her. They're trying to sell her to a Saudi prince who, they say in the episode, is not representative of any group of people, but it's a singular individual.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, I wonder then.
Can I be a Planetina defender for a second and say that I love, because she was commodified herself, right? As well as all of, let's say, 90s era environmentalism, which then you get explicitly in as represented by the kids. But I think she even herself, right? She's got the manager guy that is like controlling her, like not even letting her, hang out with Morty. Like, oh, you want an autograph? You got to do this, whatever, right? So she's constantly she's a product. She's turned into an object that is a commodity that is used for commercial purposes to expand, let's say the corporate interests of power and whatever. And so then when she breaks out and she goes on her rampage, maybe that's because she doesn't know, because she hasn't been able to since the 90s, let's say, or before that. She hasn't been able to really express herself in a way. And so in a way, this is kind of just like almost like the primal scream, if you will, of her activism in kind of confronting what to do in the world. And so maybe it comes out in a way that we would say is inappropriate or immoral, but there's a sense in which this is her first moment where she's able to actually express some bit of autonomy.
Yeah, she's like a child.
It's
like a fish out of water, or she's finally able to have freedom, but then she lashes out with her newfound freedom.
Yeah, and she just happens to have fucking superpowers.
Like Kira,
exactly.
Right.
She's clearly got some arrested development because she's dating a fucking 14-year-old and sure, even though she's potentially hundreds of years old, as Morty says, I don't remember exactly the line, but she's made of whatever, so I'm not sure that age is really a thing for her. So yeah, there is something about that.
Yeah,
I think that all this whole conversation, I think, is kind of a small part of the episode, like in the sense, like I think Rob Schwab, who wrote the episode, was like, all right, it'd be funny if someone fell in love with Captain America, and and basically then work backwards from there. And so I think it's less of an eco-terrorism comment or something, and more it's like this is a vehicle for Morty to fall in love with, and then how is he going to react to, like you're kind of saying, this child with great powers getting to become unleashed.
Yeah, to broaden out a little bit, I mean, so this is something I think they've done well so far this season, is having, well, I guess they've only done it twice because our last episode didn't have a B story, but running these B plots that really come together and reinforce the themes of the A story in a kind of like not hitting you over the head way. And I thought they did that well this time. And I especially thought it was very funny that Summer saved a planet. So after all this stuff of Planet Tina trying to like save Earth, all her good motivation, the only person in this episode who saves the planet from destruction is Summer, but she only does it to prove a point to Rick and prove that Daphne doesn't actually like him. She's just trying to get her right away. And I mean, in one sense, it's just a funny joke. Like, it's a funny part of the episode. If it means nothing else, I fucking love it. It is funny how, like, it kind of shows, like, in the sense, this planet is all, partying and fucking and orgying because they're all going to die. And in, like, 2 seconds, she just saves them. And it made me think of the way in which sometimes with, like, whether it's climate change or all these problems in society, so many of them seem so fixable, we just, like, don't do it. And I thought that was just a funny moment. Like, oh, yeah, they could easily stop this. Summer did it in 2 seconds just to prove a point. And now their civilization's saved. And now that one father and son will never talk again. But, yeah, I don't know. But what did y'all note that connection between the two storylines?
Yeah, is it like the pragmatic, we can save the world, but fuck love? Because, that's the idea that's like, no, Rick, this isn't a thing. Don't worry. But fuck it. Guess what? We can actually stop all this destruction. And then on the other side, it's the opposite. It's kind of like it's like they're trying to preserve the planet the whole time because love is the thing that can save it. But in the end, it actually doesn't really work out in that same way. So it kind of like is almost like they're coming at these same points of contradiction, but from different angles, right? You've got the pragmatism on one side, and on the other side, you've got like the romanticism. Those are kind of the two different storylines there.
What do you guys think? If the planet was ending, would we all just become these like Randy nihilists that wanted nothing but the seeking of pleasure? Interesting. The show just assumes if 3 apocalypses are happening, everyone is just like banging in the streets.
Yeah, I definitely thought about that. We would be scared shitless. We would all be like freaking out, and there'd be mass chaos, and new religions would be forming in the last week, and we'd all be praying to every god that exists, and everyone would be scared. And a few people would be having orgies and doing all that other stuff, fun bucket list stuff.
Yeah, they'd be covering all their bases, right? You'd be everyone. Worshiping every god just to make sure we didn't leave anybody out. And
I mean, I'd be partying, but
Well, that's the thing. I think if it were a slow death, like if it were some sort of like dystopian slow death of the societal structure,
fried very slowly because we don't have an ozone layer year by year. Yeah, like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would definitely descend into just kind of like a hedonistic. That's why the Walking Dead reference popped into my mind, and it was so interesting because I was like, oh, so these people are living in this sort of like post-apocalyptic wasteland, and there's like high intense emotions, and I'm surprised that people aren't just banging just to like feel something, right? To feel some kind of connection. And that's kind of what happens in the second season with Maggie and Glenn, and they're just kind of like, yeah, I'll have sex with you, and it's like, okay, let's do this. And it's kind of just like, okay.
Yeah, this is the second week in a row I think I'm making this comparison, but the same guy, someone writes for both of these shows, so it's fine. But in Loki, in one of the recent episodes, Loki, the main character, and oh my gosh, what is her name? Whatever. There's 2 Lokis. There's 2 variants. They're on this planet, and it's also facing like a meteor that's about. Loki and Sylvie. There. Thanks to our producer Maddie for pointing that out. But they're on a planet that's also about to die, where like an asteroid's coming for it. And the way they picture the apocalypse is all the rich are getting on these special trains to drink champagne to get to an ark to get away, and then all the like poor people on this planet are just like screaming and horrified. They are not like sucking each other off in the street or having sex with their dads. So, I think it was an interesting representation of that on 2 different shows happening around the same time. I think I would be more in the Loki version of freaking the fuck out in the streets and not having sex with anyone's elbow. But that's just me. It's the sort of person I am.
Well, don't you think it depends on the type of event? right? Like if an asteroid is coming and all the rich are gonna be like doing their Elysium thing and they're gonna escape into space and they're gonna just like abandon the rest of us, then yeah, we're not gonna be fucking partying and being like they do. What was that fucking? Remember fucking Independence Day when the teenage daughter is in the truck with that guy and he's like, "You don't want to die a virgin, do you?" The guy that looks like Keanu Reeves, the young dude.
Oh, horrible!
Like, horrible. I don't think it'll be like that, right? But like if it's like this slow kind of oncoming, the heat death of the universe, and we all become nihilists and we all just embrace the nothingness of the world, then we're like, you know what? Let's just feel something. Let's just feel
how about this? On the third planet, after Summer saves it, one of the first things someone says is like, "Oh no, we have to go to work tomorrow." And like, I just love that that's the reaction. Like your whole civilization got saved and you're just like, shit. And it's just like, I thought that was such a real moment that we just hate work so much. It's like, I would rather the planet blow up than me have to go to work today.
Hey, on this note, I shared this on my Insta. It's a quote from Bukowski from Factotum. He says, "How in the hell could a person enjoy being awakened at 6:30 a.m. by an alarm clock, leap out of bed, dress, force feed, shit, piss, brush teeth and hair, and fight traffic to get to a place where essentially you made lots of money for somebody else, and we're asked to be grateful for the opportunity to do so?" So.
Yeah, you know what? Let the meteor hit, man. Well, anything else anyone wanted to touch on for this episode? We've been digging into a lot, but I want to make sure we have a chance to hit anything else y'all want to hit. Ryan, you got anything else?
Just form-wise, not necessarily theme-wise.
Yeah.
This was one of those episodes that I've kind of complained about this in the past, where it was. I felt like the beginning and setup was spit so fast by the characters that I was like sitting there going like, wait, have I missed something? Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm just slow here, you know, and then your average Rick and Morty fan. But when I'm sitting there at the beginning, when they explained the planet thing, I had to watch that scene again because I don't know, like the whole I didn't really understand what was going on and stuff. I mean, it was so quick. The lines were funny, but it was so fast paced where I feel like the show can afford sometimes to slow it down. I know it's hard to cram in all your good jokes into 21 minutes. But did you agree with me? I'm glad that I'm not the only one.
I did. When they the first time I watched it, and then when they got to the planet and there was the orgy, I was like, wait, why is there the orgy? And I was like, good. Oh, so the whole premise here is that the connection is because these three events are happening, the obvious result is mass orgies. And I think they didn't make that, or maybe I just didn't catch it, but yeah.
No, no, they didn't make it clear. If we're both sitting here with the same thought, that's definitely what I was saying.
We're not idiots. We're smart.
Yeah, we're smart. Yeah, we're fast.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. I think they've done that a couple of times this season. Austin, anything else that you noted from this episode that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet, that if we did not talk about, you would feel like you didn't do your due diligence by being on Squanch?
Love is a distraction, right? They say that at one point, right? Like, love is a fucking distraction. I was reading about Nietzsche actually last night, and he talks about like these three illusions that kind of cover over the suffering, the essential suffering and tragedy of life. And one of them is in the form of like Socrates, that you sort of idealize reality and envision that, you know, there's a purpose and a task that you have. This was also seen in like scientific modernism. It's like, oh, like if we just have enough knowledge, we'll be able to accede to some sort of like utopian perfectionism or whatever, yada, yada, yada. The second one is kind of like Greek, Hellenistic, Apollonian, blah, blah, it doesn't matter. And then the final one, the illusion, is the illusion that he prefers of tragedy, which is just that, no, you fucking just confront the tragic, the real of the tragedy of reality, that it is fucking suffering, right? And you don't try to just cover over it, because if you try to just cover over it, that's when love is a distraction. But there's got to be some sort of way of kind of like not just being totally romantic and idealistic, even though I'm caught in Cupid's snares at the moment. But and I love it. So part of me is like, just be a fucking sap and just be a romantic and just fucking don't guard your heart. And then another part of me is like, no man, guard your fucking heart. And love is it will walk you into the trenches, into the ditches, and it will distract you from the political needs and the social needs of the world and stuff like that. So, but yeah, that shit like really hit me hard. And yeah, poor Morty, man, like he's heartbroken, but I don't think that the heartbreak is like a a commentary on love not being powerful or real or sufficient. I don't think it's cynical at all. I actually think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful tragedy, right? And so that for me is kind of at the end that, yeah, it's hard, it's difficult, but at the end, it's not like he says, oh, fuck her. She says, fuck you to him. But he basically tells his mom, he's like, I loved her deeply. And I think that's really sweet. And so, yeah, this is me in my romantic phase.
When you're a 14-year-old boy, so that's the only experience I can speak to. But if you're a 14-year-old boy and like a cool, impressive, blue older woman is interested in you, you could find out some really dark stuff, but you'll lie to yourself because you just want someone to like you. So I think they did a good job of like getting at that tension. And like that's the limit. 300 people, you can't do it. 250, I don't know. We can't do it.
They also, I thought, did a good job of expressing how when you're a kid and you were like, man, I am so mad at my mom or dad right now, and like he's like, I hate you, whatever. And I definitely had flashbacks to being like, yeah, I remember being that mad at my mom for something that now I think back and go, of course.
I've done that triple door slam, look back move before. Yeah. But that's why I just love that moment where Beth was able to like be mad at Morty when he was being a little prick, but when she needed him, she was there. It was really sweet. And I was kind of waiting at the end of the episode for some other like joke or something ridiculous, and I thought that was kind of bold. They just ended with Beth holding Morty as he cried.
Mm-hmm.
And if we were all in person, the podcast would end like that, but we're digital, so none of you can hold me while I cry. Go ahead, Awesome.
Yeah, so the one other romantic thing that I liked is that you have the 4 earthen elements, right, of like earth, air, water, fire, whatever, and they're commercialized and they're commodified in the hands of the kids. But when Morty gets his hands on those powers, he uses them for love, right?
Yeah,
and I thought that was. I know, but I thought that was kind of an interesting thing too, because now he has control over the elements. Right, but it's for the service of love. Listen, man, I'm just trying to be in my romantic tip for.
Okay, well, I have to stop.
And there's no heart.
Some other things. No heart. Yeah. Wow. That's real. let's all take a second. If you're listening to this podcast, pause, think about what it means that there's no heart ring. But for now, we're going to keep it moving. So before we move on to the next segment of the podcast, a shout out to Dude Who Bides, who said he thinks we were both right in our prediction for this episode. Michael, that's me. I predicted that Planetina was a corporate puppet, and Dude Who Bides predicted she would go crazy or suicidal due to an existential crisis. Good job, Dude Who Bides. Thanks for being here. And Prairie Fire said ecofascism comes to mind with this episode. It absolutely does. Now, those friends shouted us out via the chat on the live stream. But if you're not on the live stream, you're listening to this later and you're thinking that you missed out, you didn't. You can email us or call us. If you want to email us, do that at squanch@wisecrack.co. There is absolutely no M, squanch@wisecrack.co. Or you can call us at 213-534-8807. That is 213-534-8807. And as always, we don't get a chance to read every email or play every voicemail, but we absolutely, we don't read them all in the air, but we read them all. We really appreciate them. So know that they've been read and appreciated unless they were mean, but they're not mean. So it's fine. I think to get us started, we have a voicemail, if I'm correct.
Hey there, I'm calling in about the most recent episode of Rick and Morty, Mortiplicity. One thing that you guys didn't talk about that I found interesting
I can't hear it.
Is the fact that some of the versions of Rick and Morty,
if that's working,
Rick and the Family, got
and
worse.
I think maybe
we
gotta like unmute a computer or something, but if not, we can save it for next time.
Pinocchio or like wood.
Okay, I'm gonna jump to some emails now. Maybe we'll get that voicemail in a second. Okay. So the first email we have is from Patrick. Great name. Patrick said, in an MSNBC interview, Dan Harmon recently said, the religion of Rick and Morty is that no one exists on purpose. Even if you're the original Rick, a decoy, or even a god, you had no choice in your existence because you didn't exist beforehand to make that choice. But if existing on purpose means the creator made you for a reason, then decoys have a purpose, but they can't know that because then they wouldn't be good decoys. Not so much as a question, but just like a comment. But I thought that was interesting. I didn't see the MSNBC interview with Dan Harmon, but I thought it was interesting that he said that like the religion of the show is that no one exists on purpose. And that's interesting to think about in light of last week's episode. So, yeah, I don't have anything else to add to that. I just thought that was a great comment.
I agree.
Yeah, our friend, I think the name is Wafa. Wafa said this is about the last episode as well. In the second episode of the 5th season, while the decoys wanted to escape and save themselves, Wooden Jerry decided to be selfish and lock them outside. Because there's only a little varnish that's enough for him. He uses it to cross the river, but he regrets living at the end, and every time he opens his eyes and wishes to die. I think the point here is that, like, and we had another email about this as well, where 2 people were like, did Jerry get punished for abandoning his family, and that's why he has to live forever and suffer eternally? Which is a dark read on that episode, but I thought it was kind of fun.
To me, the read is that usually, obviously you would want to survive, and so Jerry gets what he wants, but obviously when Jerry gets what he wants, it still turns out to be really shitty for him, and so
yeah,
it's that kind of a tragedy. Oh, and then I also saw we got emails telling us that Queen wrote that song "Do You Want to Live Forever" for Highlander. We didn't really point that out. I kind of forgot about that. That's pretty cool.
Oh shit!
We forgot about it because you were busy singing it real well. We actually do. I should announce this. Wisecrack is currently in debt for $5 million to RCA Records and Recording Group for the copyright for the song. But it was worth it.
Worth it.
But yeah, that was so cool to learn that. Okay, we got an email from Travis, and this is a theory about Mr. Always Wants to Be Hunted. Says this: love the show. I assume he means both the Squanch and Rick and Morty. We'll just assume to believe that. Says, I have a theory that I believe is easy to miss. I think Mr. Always Wants to Be Hunted is the final failsafe for the true Rick. Rick mentions not to hunt him to completion. I feel like they also try to explain it with Jerry being confused by his presence. He mentions the starfish man in the target suit after the rest of the family has accepted being hunted by the squids. They brush Jerry off even after he mentions, why was he in a cryopod? I think he shows up once decoys started making other decoys. So Mr. Always Wants to Be Hunted doesn't pop up again until the closest Ricks of the Ricks, not the true Ricks, fight it out, killing the Rick most like the true Rick, then alerting true Rick in space with Space Beth. So I think the basic read here is that Mr. Always Wants to Be Hunted is there to make sure that the real Rick stays in charge and is there to assassinate or take out any of the other Ricks that potentially get in the way. Then he said, I don't know, but great episode. Also love the fact that the varnish is what made Pinocchio Jerry immortal. So I don't know, did either of y'all think that? I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't have this thought. It's an interesting theory because I was wondering, like, why the hell is there a Mr. Always Wants to Be Hunted and what is he?
I love that idea. I have no idea if it's legit or not, but I love the because the one thing I was thinking was, obviously, the real Rick, the true OG Rick, would know what an infinite loop of fucking decoys would end up happening and stuff. So he would have something, some proof, some test that would prove this. So I think that's a good one. And it just happens to be the stupidest thing ever, Mr. Who Wants to Be Hunted.
The whole point of kind of like a multiplicity of worlds theory, though, is that there is no true Rick, right? There is no authentic Rick, and so even the Rick that is the true Rick could be the same Rick as the other Rick, except the only difference is his fingernail is just a little bit longer than the other one, right? but literally everything else in the world could be the exact same. Like, I mean, how minuscule are the differences within these like multiplicities? So I think that's the idea. Is it's this conundrum that the difference between the real and the simulation, or the real and the simulacra, is kind of confounded. No,
well, no, but the multiverse Ricks that have happened in this show are different than the decoy Ricks. The multiverse Ricks are just, that's from outside our dimension, all the multiverses.
Because the decoys are in the same reality.
Yeah, within this one dimension that we are supposedly is the base one. Supposedly, Rick has made 1 million decoy families, which are just supposedly perfect replicas.
It's a lot because we have to parse between decoys, clones, and then different versions of the same being from an alternative dimension or timeline. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to work on. Yeah. Austin's better. This is true morning energy, everyone. You might not know this. Austin is broadcasting from a discrete location on the globe where it's his morning and it's our evening. So he has that fresh morning energy. And Ryan and I have that back from the factory. When can we get to happy hour energy? So last email I want to read. This is from Matisse, and he says this. To me, the self-duplicating Ricks seemed very analogous with human life in general. We constantly strive to make more of ourselves for our own security. This then leads to tribalism and conflict, mainly because of the prisoner's dilemma mentality, which the show also touched on, but also the diversity we see in the later generations of decoys. Any thoughts on this?
So like human beings are decoys, like the kids that we raise?
Well, I think he's saying like the desire to duplicate is analogous to humans in general, because we just want to make more of ourselves or be around more people like us for our security, and then makes it to where like we're tempted to kill anyone that kind of is too close to us or like reminds us of us without being us or something like that.
Like when you meet your doppelganger and you're like, I am driven to murder this person and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know about that. What do you think, Austin?
I love it, man. Fucking this reminds me of Byung-Chul Han, who talks about how we're trapped in the inferno of the same, is what he calls it. Like what we want is just to reduplicate ourselves and our partners. When we swipe right on somebody on a dating app, it's because we swipe right on somebody that like ticks the boxes that are just like projections of ourselves. Or when we buy a product, it's like somehow the fulfillment of a desire that we have, but it's all just like more and more of me, of me, of me, and we're just all becoming the same masses. This like sameness, and we're trapped in this hell of sameness. I love it.
Someone's gonna write an email being mad at me for saying this, but it's another Loki connection because recently, a spoiler, but you've seen it or you haven't. I don't know. Pause this and watch it. But Loki falls in love with himself. This idea that we all love ourselves and that sameness and narcissism is so core to our being that the only way this person can find love is literally when he falls in love with a variant of himself. Yeah. Kind of rickish. Once again, thanks for all the emails, and thanks to everyone who wrote email that we didn't get a chance to read this time. We only have so much time, and you would get mad at us if we had a 3-hour podcast where we read every email. Now, along with the podcast, if you want to hear more about Rick and Morty, we are putting out. I'm not going to promise anything. We have been putting out weekly quick take videos on Rick and Morty because the episodes have tickled our intellectual fancy. We currently have a video working on right now about this episode and the question of was Planet Tina right? So you can keep a lookout for that one. We did an episode last week about religion and the unconscious. It was very Austin Hadian-ish because it talked about Lacan and God and all that stuff you like so much. Also, before we jump over, shouts to Harrison Dill, who said Rick is an alien from a planet of blue-haired people. Beth is adopted. Rick is the only supposed human in the show with blue hair. And then we have another surprise Austin. Oh, it's the same message. So thanks to everyone who's in the chat with us. Before we head out, let's start with Austin. Austin, tell us all the various places. You guys are the worst and the best for this because both of you have so many places where you can be found on the internet. Austin, starting with Twitter, where can people find you and your content on the internet?
Twitter, Austin_Hayden. Insta, AUS_HAY. TikTok, Austin.Hayden. My YouTube channel, Austin Hayden. My website, austinhayden.com. I got a philosophy podcast that I do called Owls at Dawn. Google me because I do acting stuff sometimes. That's it. I mean, I'm sure
good.
More,
7. Ryan, can you beat that? Ryan Haley, where can people find you and your shows and your videos and your comments on the internet?
Ryan Shorts on YouTube and the other ones, and then you can see me on Funhouse every once in a while. Both of those. Check them out.
Awesome.
Red State Ryan. Red State.
You can do it. Y'all can find me at Michael O. Burns on Twitter and Instagram, and then you can also find me on Wisecrack. That's a known fact. But Austin, thanks again for being here. It's really exciting to have you here. I feel like I'm on a Show Me the Meaning, and that I'm like a guest in y'all's house. I hope I didn't disappoint, but hopefully, Austin, will you come back sometime and talk about Rick and Morty with us, or did this ruin it for you?
No, this was so good because it actually rekindled my love for the show. So this was really good. So thank you for having me on. Yeah, because I'm in it. I'm into it now.
Thank you for coming, Austin.
Hell yeah. Well, friends, this has been the Squanch. We will be back next week after episode 4. In the meantime, I will give the microphone to Ryan Haley himself.
Rick and Morty, there are heroes. Gonna down to 0.
Great job. You really nailed it with that one. Nailed it. See you guys next week. Bye.